Garmin Stone Cold Fishing with Steve Pennaz and Danny Thompson starts right now.
Hey guys, welcome to Garmin Stone Cold Fishing. I'm Steve Pennaz, and that guy on my right over here is Danny Thompson. Danny, I know you were down at the St. Paul Ice Show along with several thousands of other people. How'd the show go?
You know, it was a good show. It was exciting to see everybody out there. And, you know, I think there's a lot of pent up excitement for ice fishing, you know, after a couple of slow seasons. So it was exciting to be down there and kind of see those big crowds again. You know, I definitely enjoy that.
That's really awesome. You know, hey, everybody, we're going to be giving away some special prizes tonight, but I really want to have you get on board and share some of the stuff about what you've been experiencing on the ice. What are some of the ice conditions on the lakes that you've been on? I can tell you right now, I was on Henry's Lake in Idaho yesterday or Friday, and we had 6 to 7 inches. And Danny, I got to show you this cutthroat trout. It was about 16 inches. Gorgeous fish on an absolutely gorgeous lake. I didn't realize I was that tall until I was walking off the lake, but it was kind of fun to do it. Hey, a couple things I want to get to before we start the show tonight. I want to say goodbye to a very, very special friend. This is Gladys Mellum. This is Karen, my wife's great aunt, who passed away on Friday, 1 month shy of her 101st birthday, but a honorary member of WHAM, a very passionate fisherman. And we had a chance to spend several falls together, and a pretty special thing. So I want to say goodbye to Gladys. It's a sad day here. The other thing is I want to point out that the Minfish auction is going to end here in about 50 minutes, 55 minutes or so. So if you haven't gone and bid, please do so. Those of you who have bid, thank you. The auction's been a tremendous success. And I want to thank Garmin for donating the Garmin LiveScope ice bundle with a lithium battery. It's still available up there, by the way. So if you guys want to check it out, go ahead. Hey, Danny, we got some great guests coming on tonight. You want to run through the list?
Yeah, for sure. You know, starting off, we're going to have JR Civic come on, you know, Walleye Pro, talking to us about some tips and tricks there. And then, you know, a lot of these people I was just hanging out with all weekend, but we've got Shane Dubois coming in, and he's kind of a full-time guide out there out west. And actually, it sounds like me and you are going to get to head out and do a little fishing with him this winter. So definitely looking forward to that. And then we got Matt from Amped Outdoors, who's going to join us. Obviously, you know, worked with Matt a whole bunch this weekend, moving a lot of batteries and stuff. And he's always a load of information on that. And then we've got Jason Barr from Tuts Bait and Tackle. You know, Jason obviously up there and kind of has his pulse on that area and kind of some of the stuff going on there. So that'll be fun. And then, of course, Elena Hansen, who's kind of going to be our member tonight, and I think has a pretty interesting story to tell. So excited to hear from her.
You know, it's interesting. I saw some posts from Mille Lacs yesterday after that big wind late last week. Some of the guys were experiencing slush conditions beneath the ice. So they would drill holes, have to clean out the slush from the hole, but then there was slush underneath the hole that must have blown in. I honestly had never heard of that before, but there were a few people on there that I thought it was pretty interesting about that. So hey, keep those ice conditions coming through. Hey, Chad Cool, we've got some great prizes we're giving away tonight. And everybody, this is Chad, producer of Lake Commandos, but also this show. And he's going to be looking for names to pick for that Garmin LiveScope that we're giving away last night of the season. And we got some other great prizes.
Yeah, great to be here again, guys. And they're already blowing up the comments. The people have not made it easy for the guy trying to keep track of names during this show. And we'll do it again tonight. That's how you qualify. Comment, like, share the show, and then your name gets in the hat. And by the end of the show, we're going to pull out 3 qualifiers for that Garmin LiveScope Plus that will be given away by the end of the season. So what is that, Steve? A 1 in 18 chance to win a Garmin LiveScope Plus by the time you're done. So that's awesome. We're going to get 2 more qualifiers tonight for another Razr auger, one of the best augers in the business, the best, as a matter of fact. And we're going to qualify 2 names tonight. Thank you, Steve, for covering me on that. And there you look at, they got the Ultra or the Synthetic. We're going to put 2 names in the hat. Then we've got some great prize packages for tonight. Berkley Tackle Pack, 3 of their newest baits, The Jack, talked about it last week. Fantastic new bait. The Power Switch, the finisher. So many fish being caught on these new Berkley baits. They're right on the cutting edge of everything, as always. And then Fish Monkey, we're going to give away some of their, a couple pairs of their wool socks. And those things are fantastic as well. So like, comment, look at this. The comments are already going crazy. We're up to 50 and we just got started. So I got to get over there. So you guys go do your thing. I'm going to go look at names.
Hey, spell your names correctly so Chad can get it down right, because he's had a little interesting challenge on that. Hey, I want to bring our first guest in tonight. I've known JR Civic for a number of years. He's a walleye pro, fishes a lot of tournaments, but he's also a full-time guide on some heavily pressured lakes like Lake Minnetonka. Believe it or not, he's out there making a living catching walleyes on Lake Minnetonka. And this guy does it at a very high level. He's getting some giant fish in the boat, and he's putting his guys, his clients, even old guys like me are getting big fish with JR. And so I'd like to welcome JR to the show right now.
How's it going, guys?
Good. I know you were at the St. Paul Ice Show too. Which booths were you working, and what'd you find out?
I worked the FXR booth, Reeds. They were a little branch off of Reeds, down on the first floor all weekend. Well, actually, I just did Friday. I wasn't there yesterday or today.
I heard the line at the Reed's booth was outrageously long. There was they must have had a lot of great specials, and I know people are
it was very busy.
Yeah, that's really cool.
A lot of great deals. They had their ice bundles, all the brands out there, all the poles. Everybody was really interested in all the live imaging coming out.
That's awesome. Hey, JR, you specialize in fishing pressured walleyes. You fish one of the busiest lakes in the state with Lake Minnetonka, but you're also fishing walleye waters all over the place. If you had one or two suggestions on how you approach targeting big pressured walleyes, kind of share your typical approach for that.
I mainly look for a lot of unpressured water. That's kind of the biggest thing. I find a lot of the fish, especially on Minnetonka, are very spooky. So light, sound walking, snowmobiles, all that kind of stuff plays a big factor in kind of where I fish on the lake all the time. A lot of times by weeds. This time of year, I'm fishing by weeds. Green's still a little green weeds is what I'm looking for right now.
Go ahead, Danny.
Well, I was gonna say, what are you using to find the green weeds in the wintertime? I mean, combination of sonar and underwater camera, or what are you using?
Yeah,
there?
little of both. I do scout and punch a bunch of holes, and you'll find in these green weed patches that there's sand, and those fish travel those little sand pockets quite a bit. And if you can position yourself close or in one of those sand pockets, you're usually in a pretty good zone.
So Minnetonka's got a lot of channels. It's got a lot of structure. It's got a lot of bays, a lot of areas that it's hard to get to from public places to walk to or take something through. Are you targeting channel ends of channels? What really are you targeting?
I'm targeting transition areas, funnels, shallow water points where the groups of shiners go up and they huddle up there. I spend a lot of time shallow. I don't fish deep very often, and if I'm gonna fish deep on Lake Minnetonka, it's gonna be a super steep break from 15 feet down to 30 feet, or even deeper at times, because a lot of the lake's really deep. There's some really deep pockets in the lake, and in the summer you see those fish will all be suspended because there's a lot of thermocline out there.
So when you're targeting fish there now, is this almost all a night bite for you right now?
No, nope. Usually I've been starting around 2 o'clock and fishing till about an hour and a half after dark. I'm seeing a lot of the fish are typical walleye bite time, right before dark, hour before that sunset bite, and just in too dark. I'm finding less activity the later the night goes on.
Really? And are you going out early so you're not punching holes at prime time, or are you finding more of your fish in that afternoon period or right at dusk?
So I've been out a couple times already, and I've been fishing in like roughly 16 feet. I go out when the sun's out, and you can see through the ice. The ice is black, it's clean, and I'll look at my hole and grab my line, and I can see my jig down 15.5 feet, 6 inches off the bottom. And
Really?
yeah, it's really, really clear this year. And 2-3 days ago, we were out fishing, and the headlamp, as soon as the headlamp shined the hole, the fish was gone, and you watched him on the live just poof, done. They're finicky at times.
Wow.
So are you fishing with lights on in the fish house, or do you go completely dark in the fish house then?
So I have an LED light bar in there, and I took electrical tape, and I actually electrical taped every single light on the light bar, so it's really, really dim in there, but light enough to be able to, tie my line if I needed to, or whatever I need to do in there. But I find bright light, they're just not attracted to it by any means.
So are you setting up and staying in the 2 holes that you're fishing, or the 4 holes, whatever you got, or are you moving from hole to hole in this situation?
So I'm usually standard, and I go out early, punch a bunch of holes, see what I see, where's the bait, what's it relating to, is it in the weeds, is it off of the weeds, is it in the point, kind of see what's going on, and that's how I position myself. And these little pockets, the sand pockets, have been super key. Find one of those, and I've been catching fish.
So walk us through some of your favorite presentations.
I don't use, everybody calls me crazy, but I actually have one in front of me, and that is a 6mm tungsten panfish jig. And sometimes just with the fathead tipped on the top of it, or just the head of the fathead, and real subtle. Not a lot of movement.
Well, this was the bait that we were using that night we were fishing. What do you like about those small jigs? Why do you go with the tungsten? Why do you go with these smaller presentations?
I just think a big bulky presentation, they're just so spooky on it. So if I got a dead stick down or a bobber rod down, and then my other rod, I'm almost always using some sort of rattling bait, and I'm not super aggressive with it, just enough, clicking and clacking to draw some fish attention to come over, and 9 times out of 10 they're hitting the dead stick on the tungsten.
Wow.
Are you ever go with suckers or shiners or any big baits on tundra?
Yep. On our tip ups, if we're running tip ups, if a couple people are out there, and we just run a spread of tip ups, usually small suckers, so 3-4 inch sucker minnows. Shiner minnows are tough to get. They're really expensive. They're hard to keep alive. It's kind of tough to beat a fathead.
Wow. So Danny, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, obviously the dead stick always seems to be deadly, but it's interesting you're going so small. Like, I feel like whenever you're walleye fishing, you always think you need to go a lot bigger than that. And I guess I've never even tried such a small jig, but it makes sense. I mean, every once in a while you'll catch walleyes on, basically baits I'm using for crappie fishing. So it makes perfect sense. But what rattle bait are you using as kind of your call-in bait then?
I've been using, actually, we got, you spoke about those new Berkley jacks. I had one on the other night, and, a smaller version of it, and just enough rattle in it. And, I've had a lot of crappies around me, and once I see them crappies go away, I know something with teeth is coming in 9 times out of 10, and they'll come take a look at the rattling bait, but then that, minnow or whatever I got over there, they're attracted to real slow movement. And unless it's a pike, they'll kind of dive in and eat whatever.
Yeah.
So I heard you had a big crappie the other night. How big was it?
15 1/4.
Wow.
On Minnetonka.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing.
It was big. We caught probably 35 crappies, and we were walleye fishing. Nothing was, over 11 inches. And then all of a sudden I seen one come in, and I was like, man, is that a crappie or is that a small stocked walleye? It was like, boom, and he hit it right away. And I'm like, holy buckets, that's a big crappie. That's my second biggest one I've ever caught out here. I got a 16-incher out here, and that was springtime fishing in the boat.
Wow.
Awesome.
One last question before we let you go. What are you using for line? Are you using braid, mono, fluoro? What are you doing? What test?
I'm still using Berkley thermally infused braid, 8-pound test, and I'm using a real light leader, fluorocarbon leader, about 4 feet of it, and straight tying it to my braided line. I'm not using a swivel or anything because I don't need to. I don't have a big erratic bait on.
Yeah.
What do you like about the braid?
The sensitivity, I don't have to do a big hook set on the fish. You can snap your wrist almost, and you should be able to bury a small little hook in their mouth, pin them down.
That's awesome. Danny,
And
any
about
other?
a 6-pound fluorocarbon is what I'm running.
Yeah, I like that setup too. I actually prefer not to have a swivel on there. You always end up reeling that thing up into your eyelets anyways.
Absolutely. And then you end up breaking tips or pulling the guide out of the tip of your rod. And
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, JR, hey, we appreciate you coming on board. Thanks for sharing some tips. I can see from the comments there's a lot. You've got people thinking about options that they probably haven't pursued in the past. And I can tell you folks, some of those fish that were in that picture came on that little tungsten jig that was in his hand just a few minutes ago. So, Hey, JR, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they reach you for maybe a guide trip or something?
You can personally get a hold of me on Facebook or Tonka West Guide Service. You can just type it into Google. Jason should answer the phone, and you can book through there or online on the website.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll catch up later.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Have a good night.
So funny, you get out on the lake with someone that takes fresh approaches to things, and he's doing some things that I have not done over the years of ice fishing. And I know you're a very passionate walleye angler and crappie fisherman too, but have you gone that small on a jig head before?
No, and I think it just shows the fact that like sometimes you get stuck in a rut of what you always do, because it does work once in a while, and sometimes changing things up so drastically like that, can really be effective. And I think sometimes it takes just fishing with someone else once in a while to, pick up those little tricks.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I like about fishing is the more that you separate yourself from everybody else, the more often you're going to find yourself catching fish that others aren't catching. And that's true. That's why everybody comes out with the new baits every year.
Yeah.
So, hey, I want to bring our next guest in, Shane Dubois. He owns Recon Angling on Flaming Gorge Reservoir. It's on the Utah border and Wyoming border. And Shane has been on the show in the past, but there's two things about Shane that I want to share. One, the guy puts in giant lake trout on the ice every year. And he's also an expert on targeting trout, some of the stream trout. Yeah. Look at that monster, wow. Danny. That fish is almost as big as yours from Tasman a couple years ago.
but through the ice, yeah.
But through the ice, and just look at the shoulders on that. So let's bring Shane on board.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going?
Hey, I know you're originally from Wisconsin. How'd you end up in Wyoming, and how'd you end up, really going to Flaming Gorge?
Yeah, so I joined the Army right out of high school and did that for 8 years, did 3 deployments, and then ended up in Wyoming and just started, I always loved lake trout fishing, kind of got into that when I lived in Colorado briefly, and the passion kind of grew from there. And Flaming Gorge for us out west is kind of the mecca for lake trout. 20, 30 pound lake trout are not uncommon out there. This year we got a 54 pounder, which was pretty huge.
Wow.
But real quick, that being said, I'm actually just down the road from your previous guest with another guest that you guys might be familiar with.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. Yeah, I knew that.
How you guys doing?
I thought we got rid of you this week.
Surprise.
So, Nick,
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys. We just thought it would be a little humorous.
Oh man, wow, I'm speechless. I don't even know what to say. I was going to say, I thought that garage looked familiar from last week. So
yeah.
I was going to say, I want to get a hold of JR, and we're going to go out and fish Tonka tomorrow. So we might try to go drive by JR's place and see if we can knock on the door and get him to come with us.
You two are about 2 miles apart right now. I think that's pretty funny. That's really funny.
I'll let you guys get back to it. Okay.
Yeah, Nick, by the way, we're giving away that next Razr auger in 2 weeks. So we're going to take a couple qualifiers tonight, and then we're going to give away another Razr auger here in a couple weeks. So thank you for your support.
Appreciate everything, guys. Enjoy. Have a great show.
Yep.
Thank you. Hey, Shane, walk us through kind of your approaches in terms of targeting big lake trout. What are some of the depths you're looking for? What are some of the baits you're using? Talk about the holes. Are you drilling one large hole? Are you drilling multiple holes? Kind of walk us through your whole process or way to go through your pursuit.
Yeah, so there's various areas you can target lake trout, right? Early ice, I kind of stick to that shallow water. The fish are coming off the spawn, so they're coming in looking for rainbows, baby carp, burbot, stuff like that to feed on. All fish that you typically find kind of less than 50 feet of water. So first thing in the morning, that's kind of, I'm working the edges. So as JR was mentioning, those steep drop-offs, a lot of predatory fish, lake trout included. I mean, they really hang out on that steep drop-off. So if you have something that comes up to 15, 20, and then say drops pretty sharp into 40 or 50, and then drops again on that level, you're going to find a lot of fish cruising up high and down low. So that's kind of where I start first thing in the morning, shallow, and then I kind of work my way out. The trout at Flaming Gorge can be they can be kind of tough from time to time. It's a lot slower of a presentation than maybe you're used to in Canada, where the fish will chase a lot more. These fish are looking for a lot more subtle action on the bottom. So more of like what you would do walleye fishing per se, but with 6 or 7 inch baits through the ice.
What are some of the baits you're running then?
Yeah, so you guys were talking about the Berkley finisher. That's definitely going to be one that I'm going to try this year, because on Thanksgiving, I was out dinking around on the boat and ended up catching a 20-pounder in about 20 feet of water, casting for rainbows on light gear. So that was pretty exhilarating. Yeah, so it definitely makes you think. Typically, I use bigger baits, anywhere from 5 to 10 inch tube jigs, and we'll use bigger spoons from time to time. And the last couple of years, we started using puppet minnows and baits like the Berkley finisher and stuff like that. And been finding, as the season progresses and that bite kind of gets more fickle, the bite with those smaller baits seems to do a lot better, much like JR was talking about using that smaller jig with the minnow. It's the same thing. Some of those fish that get more pressure, sometimes a more subtle and natural approach does really seem to trigger those big fish into biting.
It's interesting. I fished a lot of very remote Canadian lakes, and I was used to them being super aggressive. I called it vertical casting. You would drop a bait to the bottom and rip it to the surface, and you could actually watch them on LiveScope chasing up to the surface. And then I fished Lake Athabasca on the border of Saskatchewan, Alberta, or Manitoba. No, Alberta, I think. Anyway, it was a very, very subtle bite, but giant fish. And, when you got a lake trout that's 30 pounds, that might be 30, 40 years old. So they've seen this stuff, and especially on a lake that you're fishing. One other thing I noticed on fast breaks, and Danny, when you and I were on Tasman Lake a couple of years back, when you have a break that comes down real steep, and then you've got that feeding shelf, and then it breaks again, those feeding shelves could be really key. Are you finding that yourself on Flaming Gorge?
Yeah. So we have kind of two things at play, which is a little bit different than you might traditionally see in Canada or even in the Midwest, where you have more bait fish. Our lake trout primarily feed on other sport fish, such as rainbows and kokanee. So the rainbows are going to be up in that shallow water, and every once in a while, they'll swim off those breaks. And often the deeper breaks suspended, you'll have the kokanee salmon that are swimming through. So those lake trout really utilize both of those breaks, either on the top or the bottom. And they kind of give a really quick analogy. Something that I heard years ago in a seminar is when you're going up over a hill, you can't see what's on the top of that hill or coming off that hill until it's too late. So it's kind of the same thing. Those lake trout know if they hide off the bottom of those breaks or right at the top, you're not going to see it. You're going to be kind of like a deer in the headlights by the time you get there, and it's going to be too late for those fish to try to escape. So it's a great way to kind of pinpoint or even look for fish that are actively feeding and actively engaging in your lures.
So what are you using for line when you're targeting 20, 30-pound fish?
Yeah, so I love the Berkley X9 braid, 30 to 40 pound, whatever your preference is. And then
Wow.
I'll use anywhere from a 15 to a 30 pound leader, just depending on the bait that I'm using.
And how long a leader are you using?
Anywhere from 6 to 10 feet seems to kind of do the trick. Our water is super, super clear. You can see about 20 feet in it. So, and these fish, if you have your leader and your stuff just right, you'll know it, because these fish will unknowingly bump into your line. And it really, you got to kind of settle yourself when that happens, because you'll feel the difference between a bite. And I have a lot of clients that you'll see them on the LiveScope where they're above their bait 2-3 feet, and they'll set the hook, and you got to remind them just to calm down a little bit, because they feel that line. And then once you do that, they're gone. They don't come back. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
What rod and reel setup are you using for something like this, where you can actually get a good hook set with a shorter ice rod?
Yeah, so I have a lot of custom rods that I use. So my buddy Jeff Fetters for Fetters Custom Rods builds a lot of my rods, and then I actually designed a rod that we're selling through Dynamic Lures this year, which is specifically targeted for bigger lake trout. So it's a 46-inch rod, and I really love the Abu, the new Revo SX. You have some really good torque and really good drag system on those new Revo SXs, and the Revo winch as well. That's kind of my go-to setup. But for our big fish, I like to have, a 45 on the low end, and then a 48 kind of to that higher end of a rod with an extra long handle, so you can really tuck it under your arm, and it doesn't kill your wrist.
Okay.
Danny, you've caught those big trout. I mean, I don't know of any fish that fights any harder through the ice than a lake trout. They've got that tail that's about that wide, and it's super heavy and good. That brings me to the last question. So what are you doing for holes? I mean, are you cutting 1 10-inch, or are you drilling multiple holes so you can get these giant fish up through the ice?
Yeah, so most of the time I have an 8-inch synthetic Razr Synthetic Ultra, and then I'll do 4 holes in a square and punch out the middle. And so I'll use a spud bar or a saw to kind of even the edges on it. And I really love tail grabbing these fish opposed to grabbing them by the mouth. It kind of, they don't suspect it. So it's kind of funny with clients who've never seen it, where the fish will be kind of swimming, and then they go back down, and then I just grab them behind the tail and gently pull them up, and then you have your hand right underneath them, get the lure out, take a couple pictures, and you're going right back in there. So you're not putting a lot of pressure on that fish vertically, and you can safely release it, because these big fish are super old, 30 to 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So what's the biggest one you've iced so far?
I am the king of 39 pounds, 15 ounces. So that is my biggest lake trout out of there. My girlfriend is the one that caught the 54 pounder, not through the ice. It was good redemption, because her first fish she ever hooked was about a 40-45 pounder that got off right under the hole, and we got some pretty it's good and bad footage anyway. Right below the ice of what not to do. But it was her first fish she hooked, and she did steal it from me. So
that's amazing.
That's a good story for us. But yeah, 39 pounds, 15 ounces is the biggest that I've landed through the ice personally. And I've had a few clients. Biggest we put on the ice is 45.
So everybody, Danny and I are going to be joining Shane on Flaming Gorge in January, and I think we're actually going to do a live show while we're out there. So we'll share it. Hey, we've had a ball. I got to let you go. We're running out of time here. But if somebody wants to book a trip or get a hold of you, I know here's your logo. What's your email address?
Yeah, it's just reconangling@gmail.com, or follow me on Facebook, Recon Angling, or Instagram is Recon Fisher. And I typically do a nice little live show like you guys have going on here. So if people want to learn more about that, they're more than welcome to join and learn more.
Awesome. Hey, Shane, thank you for the time. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Yep. Have a good night.
Wow. I mean, 39 pound.
I still can't imagine like how powerful it was reeling in a lake trout with summer gear in a boat and just all of that, a big net, and then like trying to pull something like that in on a 48-inch rod is just like I can't even believe it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm excited.
just the risk. So I'm looking forward to getting out there, and it
Yes.
should be a ton of fun. Hey, I have to apologize. We're behind schedule right now, Danny. We've had some great conversations. Our next guest is Jason Barr, owner of Tuts on Garrison on Mille Lacs Lake, and I got to know him when he was elected to the Minfish Board of Directors here just a couple of months back. But two things that's interesting about Jason. One, he's the coach of the Brainerd fishing team, the high school fishing team, which is the largest in the state. Danny, I think he has, we'll ask him, but I think he has 140 students on his team, which is insane. And obviously I want to talk about Mille Lacs and what the latest on conditions are. So Jason, are you here? There he is.
There he is.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, thanks for joining us. Hey, take us through real quickly what's happening with the ice on Mille Lacs right now.
Yeah, so the bays are locked up. Both Walk-On Bay and Isle Bay got about 9 inches of ice. They're already letting side-by-sides out in a lot of spots, so that happened really fast. You know, last couple of years we haven't been accustomed to that, so that's really good to see. The industry obviously needs it. The entire industry in the state needs it, but the resorts on Mille Lacs have got pretty hammered, recently due to regs, weather, whatever it is. So that's good. The rest of the lake locked up last night, which we didn't expect. You know, we had a really high wind last Wednesday, and it blew everything off, and that next night it locked up completely. We're looking at the forecast Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday down to single digits or even below zero. So I would expect that guys will be able to get out to the main lake by next weekend.
Wow. What are you hearing on the fishing? Are you hearing good reports yet?
Yeah, well, it's good and bad, right? Like the lake is extremely healthy. Record perch hatch this last spring, record tulipy hatch, and record walleye hatch all the same season. So that really warm winter that we had was incredibly good for that. And a lot of the weeds never died off because of our warm weather. So the hatches just did very well. Now, that being said, the walleyes have a ton of stuff to eat. and so they're there. We're seeing them. We see them on LiveScope, and we see them on our Mega Lives and on all the forward-facing sonars. And you know what? You can't get them to bite. They're just stubborn because there's a ton, and I mean a ton, of bait in that lake. So it's kind of interesting. The cool part, though, I think you guys will get a kick out of this is, so the DNR, they do a bunch of nets, and it's a very well-managed. I shouldn't say well-managed, should I? I should just say managed lake.
It's your opinion.
And what I think is kind of interesting is normally they look for first of the year walleyes to be 5 or 6 inches long by the time they do their nets in the fall. That's pretty common. And this year they were finding walleyes up to 9 inches already because of the awesome growth rate because of all the bait in the lake. And the other cool part of that is perch cannibalize. So they are seeing record numbers of perch that are 9 inches or bigger, which they consider a jumbo, a perch that somebody would target. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
I was on the lake in June taping an episode of Lake Command. I was with Mark Kortz, and I have to admit, I have never seen clouds of bait fish that we saw on LiveScope. I've never seen it before like that. It was incredible how much was out there, and we ran into a tough bite. I mean, we got enough fish, but it was not what it was earlier in the year when everybody was just smoking fish. It was good. Hey, I saw a couple of reports of anglers that were on Mille Lacs the other day, and they ran into slush issues under the ice. Have you hear about that, or what happened?
Yeah, so that's from that great big window that we got. So it wants to freeze, but it doesn't freeze completely. So it makes these giant slush patches under the ice. And it's a bear. I mean, it's a pain in the butt to get your hole cleaned, like to where I don't even deal with it. We had it a few years ago as well after a big wind. I'll move. I'll go to an area that doesn't have it, because you spend more time trying to clean your holes than you do not fishing. So I have actually seen that. It's a pretty interesting concept. But yeah, so the slush gets trapped underneath the ice. That wind pushes it underneath the ice sheets, and there it sits.
That's amazing. I'd never heard it until I saw it this week. And some guys were saying they were spending 10, 15, 20 minutes to clean out their holes, which is incredible. Hey, what are some of the
castle with 8
what are some of the hot baits you guys have been selling of late? What are some of the anglers coming in and buying at your place?
Yeah, so Mille Lacs is really good for spoons. What we're seeing is most guys, and this has been going on forever, is they'll take like a lipless crankbait, whether it be a rip and wrap or whatever it is, and they beat it off the bottom, and then they'll have a dead stick set up next to them, whether it's on a tip up or whatever it is. And normally those fish are coming in, checking out all the vibration, all the noise, and then, oh, look, there's a golden shiner for me to eat, and wham, you get him on the dead stick. So that's a really common thing to do. With forward-facing sonar, it's kind of funny. Some of these guys who are guiding are actually doing like deer drives for walleyes. You can literally walk and watch the walleyes swim out in front of you, and they'll put guys out on the end of where they're going to push these walleyes to, and they'll catch them. It's kind of a neat concept, but
wow, I never heard.
Yeah.
Danny, next time we go, I get to be the stander.
Yeah, no doubt.
One of the things I'll tell you, Danny and I were on a flat a few years back on the north end of the lake, and it's something that I've never seen. Danny, I don't know if you've seen it since, but we saw probably 100 walleyes on LiveScope that day. Actually, we were fishing Panoptics back then, but we had 100 walleyes swam from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, and never saw one going the other direction. And then later that afternoon, all the fish were going the opposite direction, and we saw not as many that afternoon. And the fishing was decent, but it was really stunning to see that type of movement before. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Hey, I want to thank you for joining the Minfish board. We're doing some big things. Our auction's going to close here in about 20 minutes, which is great. That's going to help fund our lobbying efforts going forward. But one other question for you. So you're coaching the Brainerd High School fishing team. If somebody wants to get involved in fishing in a competitive way with high school anglers, what's the best approach for that? Yeah.
So I'm actually the executive director of the Student Angler Tournament Trail, which we started about 8 years ago now. And that's after I started, as a coach of the Brainerd team. And we went from 80 kids. We actually have 150 kids now, which is pretty cool. So we're bigger than the football team, the basketball team, and the baseball team combined, which is pretty awesome. But there's 150 schools now in Minnesota that have fishing teams. So it's more common for a school to have a team than not, which was not the case very long ago. So there's some great organizations. I just seen a comment on the bottom left from Jeff Stanway. He's part of the Bassinators. But ask your school if you want to jump in, and it doesn't matter if you're a walleye fisherman, a crappie fisherman, if you go out once a summer, or just there to learn, jump in, or if you're an avid tournament angler and you just want to go out there and compete and go to the next level, then there's that opportunity as well. In fact, we had a kid from Minnesota who actually cut his teeth in our trail. His name's Easton Fothergill from Grand Rapids and made the elites through the college circuit. We got several kids on our team now who went to college on full rides. I mean, literally full ride scholarships, and traveled the country and got their expenses paid to go fish. So it's an incredible opportunity. If you like to fish, jump on. Again, you can look up Student Angler Tournament Trail, or like I say, a lot of the high schools have teams now. So just ask your school. And if there's not a team there, then start one. Reach out to us, and we'll help you get up and running.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, Jason, thanks for your time tonight. We really appreciate you sharing everything, and good luck in the coming tournament season for your teams.
Good luck, gents. Stop by if we get out to Mille Lacs.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do.
Have a good night.
Thank you. That's outstanding. I mean, isn't that amazing? 150 teams.
So cool.
It's incredible. I wish they would have had that when I was there. I would have skipped wrestling. I would have
No doubt.
skipped wrestling. Yeah, I hated cutting weight. That wasn't a ton of fun.
No.
Hey, Danny, I know you know our next guest, and I know you know his products. I got to tell you, Amped Outdoors has the best lithium out there, and more importantly, I think, is their commitment to the consumers is phenomenal with their education. So if you have any questions on lithium batteries, I just go to ampedoutdoors.com. There's an entire section there that has stuff, but I'd like to bring in the owner and founder of Amped Outdoors, Matt Lardenwall.
Hey guys,
Ooh.
thanks for having me again.
Oh yeah.
You know, most of the Packer fans had that look this week after that Lions game. I have to admit that was a fun game to watch, and it's one time a year that I was actually rooting for the Packers.
We'll get them again in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, we got to play you again here coming up too. So, hey Matt, I want to talk to you a little bit about selecting the right battery for LiveScope and other forward-facing sonar units. And one of the things that impressed me about your website is you guys are so committed to making sure that the consumers understand the products. And I mean, I'm going to just show you a slide that I pulled up off of there. You know, lithium battery education, you've got several videos and comments on there. But if somebody's in the market for a lithium battery for forward-facing sonar, can you walk us through how to pick the right battery for the unit and your type of fishing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've noticed a lot of people are now, you know, not just getting into their first forward-facing sonar units. They're now expanding into larger screens. And as you go into larger screens, they draw more power. So we've really, you know, came out with an extensive lineup to really take care of everybody's needs, from a small form factor 19 amp hour battery like this, you know, really good for like a 9-inch screen for 12 plus hours, all the way up to, you know, your larger 52 amp hour battery. That'll work with a lot of your 10, 12-inch screens, give you, you know, anywhere from 1 to 2 days out in the water, still in a light form factor, or a small form factor, lightweight technology. And yeah, definitely is changing the game out there today.
Dan, did you notice he picked that unit up? He just went, you know, like it weighed nothing.
Yeah.
You know, if that was a lead battery, he'd be, you know, over to the thing. But one of the things that you have up on your website, and can you walk our listeners and our viewers here through this a little bit about it? So on the left side, you've got a Garmin LiveScope with a 7-inch screen. You got one with a 9-inch screen, 10-inch, and then 11. And it actually had a 16-inch screen, but I haven't seen anybody ice fishing with a 16 yet, unless they got a wheelhouse. But
no, not yet. It'll come, you know. No, yeah, we're starting to see a lot of people, you know, using that, going from that 7 to 9-inch screen, really going from like 10 to 12-inch screens. So we put this operating time chart out there, just giving you, you know, the estimated draw of all the units, and then you will have in here all the different batteries, anywhere from like our 19 amp hour all the way up to like the big 52 amp hour for ice fishing specifically. And it'll tell you approximately how much time you'll expect out of your unit. So whether you're a person just going out there fishing, every day and recharging your battery, you can get something smaller and lightweight. Or if you're that weekend warrior that you don't have access to charge, or going on a flying trip, or going out in some of these outer waters, you can go with a really big battery to get you through a full weekend.
So, Danny, what are some of the things that anglers can do when they're on the ice to reduce how much power that they're burning through in a given day?
I mean, obviously the big one is backlight. It's just like, you'll do that on your cell phone if you want to sit in the deer stand all day. So same thing with your ice fishing bundle, especially this year at the ice show, I've seen so many people, upgrading to like 8610 so they could have the HDMI out port on there this year. And so bringing that backlight down, even just to 80%, but to like 70%, you can extend that battery life quite a bit. And, the cool part is when you're in a fish house, you really don't need that backlight 100%, because you're in a little bit darker of an area. So bringing that backlight down is a really big deal. The other thing sometimes seems and Matt probably knows more specific on time, but like, you know, kind of keeping that stuff warm and up off the ice a little bit, not as significant as the backlight, but, you know, keeping that battery in the house and, you know, up off the ice a little bit definitely seems to help that battery life as well.
Yeah, it's not just lithium batteries, it's all batteries. You know, if you're going to be fishing tomorrow, right, it's best not to maybe throw it in your truck at night, you know, when it's really cold, where you go out with a cold battery. It's best to kind of keep that warm in your vehicle or inside. And then when you go out to use it, then, you know, when you introduce it to the cold, when you're using the battery, it naturally kind of heats itself with resistance, you know, so it'll perform the way you need to.
Yep.
So, Matt, I've heard of anglers trying to wrap their batteries or put some sort of a heat source next to it. Is that necessary with lithium, or what do you recommend in terms of maximum performance when it's cold out?
Yeah, lithium perform better in cold temperatures. So, you know, I don't think that's as necessary. Maybe more so on augers than anything. When you're looking at fish finders, they don't draw really as much power as augers. So, when you're using them, they kind of naturally heat themselves up and stay warm. So, and yeah, you're not going to lose a whole lot. I mean, if you're fishing extremely cold temperatures, like we've seen maybe upwards of 10% lossage of capacity, but nothing too major.
So I ran into an issue with charging a battery this year, and I didn't have access to an amp charger, so I bought one at some place out of desperation. I needed it for taping with Lake Commandos, and it didn't work. So to walk us through the charging process, and what's the difference between your chargers and what some other brands might be offering?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different chargers out there. When you're buying one, definitely recommend buying the one specifically by that manufacturer for that battery. So like we carry 14.6 volt batteries, they require 16.8 volt chargers, and then we carry 12.8 volt batteries that require 14.6 volts. So make sure that you get the right charger recommended for that battery. Like on our website, we have that listed. Our NMC batteries that use that 16.8 volt will include that type of charger. But yeah, make sure you have the right charger. And yeah, if at all possible, make sure you bring that with you everywhere you go, or even label that one so that way you know that's the right battery charger for the specific battery you're using.
Awesome. Hey, I'm excited to have you on a couple more times this season. I want to cover some charging and things, but one point I do want to make: how does temperature affect charging in lithium?
Yeah, so you definitely want to make sure that when you're done for the day, bring that battery inside, warm it up above freezing. That way that, you know, your battery will take a charge when it's above freezing, when it's a lithium, as well as it'll make sure that you get a full charge on that battery versus doing that in cold temperatures. You can get that reduction in, you know, in charge rates and capacity. So yeah, make sure you bring that in, warm it up, throw the charger on there, and you should be good to go by the next morning.
Awesome. Hey, I know you worked the whole weekend at the St. Paul Ice Show, so we'll let you go, but thank you so much for sharing your expertise, and we'll be in touch in the next week or two.
Sounds good. We'll see you next time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Boy, I've enjoyed getting to know Matt. He's a tremendous, just a tremendous businessman, but I love his commitment to the education side of things, because there's so much to learn about new technology, especially something like batteries, where, I mean, if your battery's out, you're out. I mean, it's just that key. So, so Danny, our next guest, the last time we had her on the show, we mispronounced her name the entire interview.
Oh boy.
It's not Elena, it's Elena, as I understand. And I doubt there's an angler in the state of Minnesota or Wisconsin that's probably caught as many sturgeon as this woman has. And so I'd like to bring her on board. If you guys want to learn how to catch sturgeon, our next guest is going to help you do that. Elena, how are you? Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing well. I saw a news report on you, a couple things, where you're actually volunteering for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, where you're catching and tagging sturgeon for a population study that they're doing. Is that the St. Croix River only, or is there other bodies of water?
Yes, so that is the lower St. Croix River only, so from Taylor's Falls Dam down to Prescott. This is a new program that kicked off 2023, and so far it's been wildly successful. we've tagged approximately 700 fish over the last year and a half. All
Wow.
combined,
Wow.
that is 3 anglers tagging. So like in my boat specifically, we've tagged around, I think it's like 550 fish.
Do you work or you just fish sturgeon?
I wish I could just fish sturgeon. I actually work full time, so
Oh my
I'm a chemical
gosh.
engineer. So
Wow.
gives me a
Wow.
little more free time than some other jobs.
You're busy. So, well, talk to me. Do you fish them through the ice as well? I thought you did.
Yes, so we do both types of fishing. We do open water fishing out of our boat and from shore. And then we also ice fish. Sorry, there's a cat on me. Not. We are attempting to get some cats into the house. We'll see how it works. Anyways, we do ice fish. We ice fish the St. Croix. Typically anywhere from middle of December down to the beginning of March when season closes.
So I know when the power plant quit distributing the warm water discharge, that changed sturgeon fishing. So if somebody wants to target sturgeon on the lower St. Croix right now through the ice, what are your recommendations in terms of the type of structure or locations where you're finding fish, the depths, that sort of thing?
So for us personally, I don't like fishing fish over 30 feet, which of course most of the St. Croix falls in the under 30 feet category until you get south of Hudson, Bayport, etc.
Yep.
Apologies. The cat's just going to be there. What we tend to target is we tend to target points. More specifically, our thought process on how sturgeon like to swim through the river is they're just kind of going in a line. And when a point gets in their way at that same depth, they're just going to move around that line. Sturgeon, unlike, say, panfish, unlike walleye, hey, Missy, knock it off. Unlike walleye, they don't necessarily adhere to a specific type of substrate or a specific type of, structure. So we've caught sturgeon in a rocky structure. We've caught sturgeon in mud flats. We've caught them in sand. Our preference is typically to try and stick to sand and mud. But that's definitely not saying I've caught my biggest sturgeon in a very rock and gravelly area.
How big was that?
That was 67 inches.
Wow.
67. So when you're fishing through the ice, walk us through how deep a water are you typically fishing? What are you using for bait? What are you using for your rod and reel combos?
All right. Well, what I was doing right before this, I actually brought out a sturgeon ice rod. So for bait, we will try and mix things up. You can use fathead minnows, like a glob of fathead minnows on a hook. You can use night crawlers. That's probably the most reliable. Some people use like dead fish if they can find it. If they had some, sucker that they caught through the ice, or even just cut sucker that you get from the bait store. So that's probably the favorite baits that you can use. You can also use scents. So you can buy scents like anise or garlic, or some people even make a shad scent. Whether or not those work is, in my opinion, still to be determined. We're kind of experimenting around. But I mean, my 67, so my PB was caught just purely on worms, no scent, no anything, just worms at the bottom. So
are you using lay flat sinkers, and how big a hook are you using?
So I can actually just show you the setup that we use. This one's a little janky, but we use pretty much, our preference is a treble hook. So I think it's a size 2 or a size 3 treble hook. We use a line of beads. So these are soft beads. You can get glow beads or regular beads. And these just kind of keep the weights away from the hook so that when that fish picks it up, it can pick up that entire thing without feeling weight on it. And then we use egg sinkers. So just a single egg sinker for the St. Croix. This rod, unfortunately, was set up with 3 egg sinkers because we were on the Rainy River and I haven't retied it yet for the St. Croix. But like a 1/2 ounce egg sinker is really all you need, even up to a 1/4, because there's little to no current. From that, you just tie on your bobber, regular old slip bobber, and of course a bobber stop. It's a very, very simple setup. And what you do is you just take this guy, you glob on, 3-4 night crawlers, maybe a couple fat heads or just a bunch of fat heads or some, cut bait.
Yep.
And we drill doubles. So I have a 10-inch auger, and I will drill 2 holes on top of each other to get me enough space that if I get a pretty large fish that we can get it up. Typically, sturgeon, again, we target anywhere above 30 feet. I've caught fish in 11 feet, and I've caught fish in 30. And there are people that have reportedly caught them in 3 or 4 feet. So they can be anywhere.
On a typical day, are you fishing daytime or nighttime? Is there one that's better than the other?
For me, it really doesn't matter. The main thing with sturgeon is time on the water. So for reference, not last year, but 2 years ago, I spent just about, I think it was somewhere like 800 or 900 hours on the ice.
Wow.
So this is mostly camping through the weekends. So we get out Friday night and leave on Sunday evening. That year, we landed, I think it was something like 8 or 9 fish over 60 inches and landed around, I think it was like 50 or 60 fish total. What it ended up averaging out to was 11 hours per fish.
Wow.
That being said, we were specifically targeting areas that we knew maybe some of the big fish were around. And that was just experience that, oh, hey, we'd fished there on LiveScope, had seen some big fish go through. Yeah. And so we said, hey, let's give it a target. There are some areas that you can get into a much faster bite. But typically, if it's a fast bite, you're catching a lot of, 30, 40 inches, which for most people, that's perfectly fine. But we tend to kind of wait it out and see what bites. So
that's incredible. What size line are you using? What type of line are you using?
Our preference, since we're almost always indoors, we're usually in a hub style. We use 40-pound braid. You can use anything less. I wouldn't recommend anything less than 40-pound, frankly. The one negative of anything over 40-pound is that you start running into line drift, where there is a very minimal amount of current. And if you're using LiveScope, specifically, if you're not using LiveScope, it doesn't really matter. But if you're using LiveScope and you want to see any fish that comes into your baits, you're going to not want your line to be like drifting far away or pushing anything away from, the cone of the LiveScope. Mm-hmm. So 40-pound line, the reel that I use, nothing super special. I just have a Piscifin Carbon X 4000 spooled up with as much 40-pound line as possible. And then the rods that I like using, anything heavy, most of them that you're going to find, since sturgeon is a very custom type of fishing, are going to be custom rods. So like a River Freak custom, but there's some really excellent, like commercially available ones. I would like to mention a Mud Puppy Tackle is a great one. And you can get a rod, I think, for 40 or so bucks. That's able to handle the sturgeon. I would personally not use a rod that's not for sturgeon. You can, if you're going out once. I'm not going to expect someone to drop $40 into a rod. But remember, these fish, we just got a report back on a 50-inch fish that had been tagged by the by the Wisconsin DNR in the 70s. So that fish was over 50 years old.
That's incredible.
And it was only 50 inches long.
That's incredible.
So if you're fighting, a 60-inch fish, you might be fighting up to, 60, 70 years of age. And you don't want to put needless strain on that fish. So that's part of the reason we have upgraded gear. We don't want to leave hooks in them, and we don't want to have them, be fighting for 40, 50 minutes.
Yeah. Danny, I don't want any comments on age. Yeah. Elda, thank you for this. Thanks for coming on tonight. I've got to cut you off. We're running late, but thank you so much. That's incredible. And if somebody wants to follow you, you got a Facebook page or anything that you're running?
I do. You can find me at Whisker Outdoors on Facebook or Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a great night.
You know, Danny, the guest tonight, I don't know if we've ever had such great information distributed. Chad, unbelievable. I'm fascinated. I haven't heard 40-pound test braids for ice fishing for a couple years, and now we got 2 guests. But hey, we're running out of time. I hope you got some names for us for.
I do.
For the Garmin Ice Bundle, the 3 qualifiers where they.
The favorite name I heard tonight so far was Whisker Outdoors. How come we didn't come up with that already? That's awesome. But tonight's LiveScope Plus qualifiers, these are tonight's. Bill, Shantae, and Elizabeth, very active, and they are going to join our the rest of our qualifiers that are going across the bottom there. So that's what we've got going for the LiveScope Plus. Razr auger qualifiers tonight. There you see them. Pete and Ralph are in the hopper, and we're going to get 2 more next week before we give away another Razr. So, guys, good luck.
Pete Dewey. I've been on ice with Pete many times. That's a congrats, Pete.
That's cool.
Okay, Berkley Tackle Pack winner tonight, Stephen Calkins.
Yep.
All right, Stephen, you need to get PM Steve with your information so we can get those things sent to you. And the Fish Monkey socks, Lauren, and I'm gonna screw up Lauren's last name. Dewar, we'll just go with that. But it's probably something else. But Lauren, congratulations on winning the Fish Monkey socks. Warm feet for the rest of the winter. That's awesome. So great night.
Lauren,
again,
we're gonna need
lots of comments.
Oh, we're going to need your sock size, your foot size for that. But that's for the Fish Monkey heavyweight socks. I'll guarantee you the best ones you've ever owned. Hey, Danny, we got a great show next week again. Are you going to be able to join us?
I'm going to try. I'm going to be in Oshkosh for the ice fishing show. So it's going to depend on, travel and how that looks.
Yeah.
So I'll keep you posted here through the week. And yeah.
Speaking of sturgeon.
like that. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, in Oshkosh.
That'd be fun. I was going to ask her if the Lower St. Croix was as good as the Rainy River, but I never got a chance. So,
yeah.
Hey guys, thank you all for joining us this week. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. If I was Batman, I'd say same bat place, same bat time. But stay safe on the ice, get some big fish, and look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Thanks for joining us.